Welcome to On Work and Revolution, where we talk about what's shaking up in the world of work and edtech. I'm your host, Debbie Goodman, and I'm the CEO of Jackhammer Global, which is a global group of executive search and leadership coaching companies. I'm also an advisor to venture-backed edtech companies, and my main mission with all of my work is to help companies and leaders to create amazing workplaces where people and ideas can flourish. So I'm really excited today to have Julie Huston as my guest. Julie is Chief Revenue Officer at Great Minds, an organization which creates curricula in math, English, art, science, and more for K-12. Julie has helped steer Great Minds from a nonprofit to a public benefit corporation, growing revenue from, listen to this, under 50 million annually to more than 300 million in 6 years, which is, now that's quite an achievement. Julie has a long history of success in education and edtech. She's worked with multiple private equity funded edtech startups and early stage companies, including eSpark Learning, Motion Math, and 3Ring. And for those of you who have been around edtech long enough, you may recall Study Island, which is one of the first SaaS K-12 edtech products. Julie spent a decade developing the sales team at Study Island from its early stage to its IPO. Back to Great Minds. Here, listen to this. 85% of Great Minds staff works remotely, 15% are hybrid, and despite or possibly because of this, they have a really, really strong workplace culture. They've recently earned a Great Place to Work certification. And today we are going to talk to Julie about creating great workplace culture remotely and some manager hacks for driving growth and high performance with hybrid sales teams who work remotely. We're going to look for some magic hacks from Julie. So welcome.
Thank you, Debbie.
All right. So let's get started. I've heard many people say that is absolutely impossible to build any culture, least of all a high performance culture remotely. And so what's your take on this?
Oh, I hope that's not true. I don't believe it's true. Um, I think it's more accurate to say that many leaders outsource HR to HR. So,
Hmm.
so what I mean by that is that you're a practitioner, you're in a vertical stack like IT or legal or sales, right? And HR, which doesn't really exist at tiny companies, right? And then like all of a sudden the company gets bigger and you have HR and HR is here and I'm going to outsource performance management metrics, what should my reviews feel like, whatever. And all of a sudden, that's not fair to HR because HR doesn't have they have one brush, right? Not like all like, well, how to IT people or how to developers. Even my team, I have inside and outside salespeople. You need to think differently about all that. So leaders at every level, departmental level, supervisor level, they need to be driving performance managers and the culture in their own groups and keeping the company's mission and values front and center through that whole thing, but in your own idiom. And remote, when you bring that element to bear, I think we talk about this a lot right now because in-person work was unfortunately a crutch for all of this, that we all just relied on. Well, we're here and we're fun and we went to a happy hour and they called that culture. And I think that was actually all fraudulent. So I think we're going to do better work now because we're going to be forced to. And so I think things are getting better. We can't just like see people and think they're productive. So that, like I said, is gone. And let's get real.
Okay, so I'm hearing you say that actually back in the day when we had this, when we were all in person most of the time, it was easy to just point to the team gatherings, the happy hours, and the team get-togethers as well. That's culture building, that's team building, and therefore we have a healthy culture. Whereas now, because we don't really have that, we've got to be much more intentional, and we've got to be very much more focused in that one-on-one as well as group engagement. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Definitely. I will say there's something to remote work that all the employees who desperately want to work from home, they need to also be cognizant of. So this is on the employee. The employees listening who are trying to get better. they no longer are getting culture by osmosis, leadership by osmosis, seeing how I organize my day, let's say as a department head and how I do it and what I look. They're missing that. They also, I heard one of my kids said this to me. He said, I love that when my boss is at our office, because he works at multiple offices. And he said, when the boss is in their office, he gets to see like very visually, oh, he's got a minute. I see that he's got a minute. I'm going to approach him about something. But when he's in the New York office, he's not there. And so he's like, I miss that. So I'm like, okay, that's really good for me to understand. It made me think about maybe wanting to open some office hours to have like, just like, here's 30 minutes if anybody wants to hop on or needs me or knows I'm available. So it's like, how do I do that? But also the employee, what's your proxy for being able to see that my door is open or to see, do you want to get on my calendar, talk to my system? How are you going to do that? So employees have to drive, in some cases, their own mentorship, their own development. They've got to lean in a little too and make that a two-way street. But that was good about being there.
I mean, I actually love that. I think that there's so much, managers and leaders get so much of the burden and the flack really for when things aren't working. And granted, that's their role, it's their responsibility, but it is a two-way street. And if you have employees and team members who are being equally intentional about wanting to engage with their managers and their colleagues, both for formal setup meetings as well as other drop-ins, that can really drive culture. I had an experience of this. I was doing my year-end check-ins. I don't do formal performance reviews because I like at the end of every project, we'll do a proper debrief and I'm like, okay, we're good now. So at the end of the year, I do these really, they're just check-ins. We talk about, what's going on. And at the end of every single one of these check-ins I do one-on-one with everybody in my team all over the world. And we always say, why don't we do this more frequently? And the thing is that I'm the one who's initiating the check-in. I'm like, why don't you let me know when you feel like checking in with me? And I think that's trying to emphasize that, normalize that as a practice is something that I certainly want to do as a note to self. I need to do it more, but I also need to invite my team members to do that more for me because I'll make my time available.
Yeah. Okay. Oh my gosh, this is so smart, Debbie, and it's so organic. So, two things I will tell you. First, I want to call back to what I said about outsourcing HR to HR. So, in HR, protocol to get us, you and I, to be doing that is going to be look like something like have a quarterly conversation. It's going to be some real scripted thing. It's not going to feel organic. And it's like, what does it consist of? It becomes a project. You hate it. I hate it. It's like I have to do my checklist for these 7 people or these 25 people or whatever. So that's why I say like it's and what you've done actually is highly supported by research, process feedback, not just feedback, but how to do it. And if you wait till the end of the year to give your people process feedback, as opposed to we just did a ride along this afternoon and I want to tell you what I saw this year was great. And I want to also show you how you did better. That's how you get immediate. So your feedback not being like some real esoteric thing. It's constant and it's not just that was good, that was bad. It's like what you specifically did. Here's how to do it better. I remember a rep, this poor gal on our team, I was seeing her all day present 6 different groups, let's say, on a state caravan. It was like they were going to rotate. So I actually approached her in between, let's say session 2 and 3 and said, can you change this? This is such a good A-B test. Can you change how you're presenting blah, blah, blah? And then I was like, yeah, I don't think my way was better. So go your way. I mean, it's just funny, but it's like that kind of feedback and interplay is the cradle of high performance. It really is. So
Yeah, I just to go back to performance reviews, and I don't want to get too stuck there, but you're right. Everybody hates them. The manager hates them. The person who's being reviewed hates them, and I don't know how meaningful they actually are because they're so far in, like the actual performance is so far in the rearview mirror. So I definitely do prefer the on the after the project or in between or like direct feedback right away. But let's continue on this question around accountability. With one of the reasons why many managers like to have people in their sight is because they believe that if you can see them, then you at least have some sense of what people are up to, and you can keep tabs on those who are lagging behind or not being quite as active. I remember my first workplace in recruiting. The mark of activity and engagement was how much time you spent on the phone, because back in the day we were like on the phone. We didn't even have have the internet. I'm aging myself. And my manager would come into the office and go, "Why aren't you guys on the phones?" And so that was the way in which managers back in the day would be able to measure performance and accountability. Things have transitioned so much, but still, I think it's easier for some managers to at least have sight of who's busy in an office environment. And it's quite scary for some to not have sight of their people, which is why why the return to office quest for a company like yours, which has so many remote people, and you've got like 250 people in your sales org. How do you make sure that everybody's doing their thing?
Yeah. Well, accountability is interesting because people often are in motion, like they're busy, but it might not be running at the right thing, right? I have a saying, I forget where I picked it up. So I forget, I don't know who I should be crediting for this, but it's like speed is only an asset when you're running in the right direction. Otherwise, you're running as far quickly as away from success as you possibly can. So I say that all the time here. So motion and action are two different things. Motion to me is like I'm making calls, but they might be completely ineffective. So you want to have measures that no matter how you're doing it, the measure is going to be a true measure of success. And for sales, that means building your goal from the ground up because all salespeople are ultimately measured against their goal. Activity is important. We'll get to that. But again, like your goal needs to be really fair and you need to have market fluctuations, like you have a state contract in one state. It's a lot easier for that rep to do business than this other state where it's a prospecting so your goal should equalize for everything. So managing people to goal is a way to say, okay, now I know that all the actions you've taken are really good and they're like leading to success. Now, you can't wait till the end of the year to find out if people are successful. So what do you do in between to know every day? So keeping it simple is really important. There are, like you mentioned, we're a complex organization. We have 4 huge product lines, and every one of them has new sales objective, upsell, cross renewal. You're doing this. You're keeping people happy. You're reacting. 80% of your week maybe is reacting. So thriving in that 20, you've got to really good at. So for us, a key measure that just surfaces to the top, and I've asked my managers to make it part of every biweekly one-to-one, is new. The new. In fact, we have a report. We have a Salesforce report. What are the new opportunities? So new, common new. So I know it's like a dumb term, new squared. I don't know what we call it. But the new report it's a relentless review of what new opportunities did you open in the last 2 weeks for new business. So it's a new presence of new business, because our ultimate goal that when we look at how we will be successful is we say, we're going to be successful for talking to lots of people. And I know that's like dumb, just it sounds really vague, but I don't care if it's by phone, email, conference, whatever the idiom is, dropping off. There's lots of ways you can do it. If one doesn't work for you, do it the other way. And if that stops working, do it another way. And if one person that's a target you have, none of your favorite methods work, get out of your comfort box and try something else to get to your man, get to your girl, whatever. So for us, talking to people is the goal, and the accountability around it is the new report. It's like, I have engaged these new people in the last 2 weeks. And you're probably thinking like, that must be constant. They're salespeople. That's what they're supposed to be doing. Do you know it can be a lot of 2-week periods in a rep's year where they haven't done any, and that will set them. Finding religion is having to tell your manager, in the last 2 weeks, I haven't opened one new anything with anyone. And that's a brutal conversation. So that's the kind of accountability that we all have, is that it's got to be that.
Right. So I would believe it because I still do a fair amount of business development myself. And there are times when it's just so much easier to speak to people that you know versus opening a new door. So being like really clear and honest about what's new and and what's an existing relationship is pretty hardcore to look at those numbers from time to time. But do you also take a look at whether the new conversations or even the existing conversations are the quality of that, because activity can be quite misleading. We can go for the low-hanging fruit, the easy new versus the appropriate new that's in the right target market for the product or the offering that we want to sell. So is there a measure of additional accountability there on the quality?
Yes, like beyond time will tell, right? Are these going anywhere? They'll ultimately
Yeah.
we all find out. So one of the hacks or one of the things I think that I've become increasingly good at over my sales career is that pipeline stages. A lot of times people love a simple like 4 or 5 pipeline stages like pre-engagement, engagement, meeting, close, whatever. And we at Great Minds, we have a lot more definitions so that we can be on the same page and precise. So when we're doing the pipeline review, we are talking about you had to have had these qualitative definitions of an engagement to hit this bar, like the 5% bar, the 10% bar, the 20% bar. And I think that also helps us get real with whether that's going somewhere or it's an initial conversation. And we would separate out, also, we forecast based on program year. So we could have new opportunities that started, but we know those are 25, 26 reviews. That happens a lot in the core space where it's like, yes, we're up for math in 25. That's been going on all through 2023. It should be. If someone's researching math or researching an ELA adoption, they should be years. That's when we're doing our job best. So we don't want to minimize those. That is a new. I need those, but also I have to fill a pipeline that's going to get me to goal. So I also need to mix that in with business that's like going to be at the right level for this year. So it's more urgent and it's going to hit different road, milestones. And because I've mentioned milestones, I will distract. I'll take this in another way. Also, you can, and again, it doesn't really matter if you're remote or in-house, because I don't care if you're an inside sales reps. Everybody wants to fluff their kitten, fluff their what I'm doing, right? Like, oh, it's better or whatever. So a milestone ladder is a nice way for a manager to and everybody to be on the same page about, like, can we all agree? Here's our sales process with our product. Think accounts have to go through these 5 things or 3 things, whatever it is. Like, core adoption is many, but ultimately it results in a curriculum review. But it might be first, like that we're on their radar or they do the. So knowing, like, I've met the decision maker, I've done this, and without other metrics like I got the PO in hand, you can really hold people to a milestone uh, ladder to say, are you meeting the milestone ladder with X number of accounts? Like, again, sufficient to meet your pipeline to say, you haven't taken anybody to this point yet, and it's step one. So we are going to have to, like, get people to step one for us, which is have them agree to a demo or to take a free trial or so really building with your team and always getting their feedback along the way on these processes. But it's like, yeah, these 3 things should happen before we've even got somebody who's on the hook for real. And in startups and young companies, when they don't know, I just had a mentor, it's become more of a friend really, but a woman that I mentor in the business. And she said, how do you deal with a brand new territory? It's like a cold territory. There's nothing. And I'm going to actually, now that I thought of this, I'm going to call her back and say, I thought of a way. I was like, well, don't put someone in a totally cold territory until you've worked it with inside, was really my answer. But now I was like, no, you know what? You can set up milestones that are like just meeting people. Like, I took 8 people to coffee. I did that. Like, there are things you can do that are milestones that will lead to achievement in most cases, and do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think particularly with longer sales cycles where the outcomes as the measure of success take longer and are fewer, it's a way to keep people accountable, but also a way to keep people motivated so that they still feel like they are achieving things, that they are along you call it the ladder or the pipeline of getting to where they need to be. It's hard to motivate people, particularly in a market like this where things can be slow and slower. The market's increasingly competitive. We're starting to face a K-12 world where ESSA funding is going to be coming, or the lack thereof, is going to become a real issue for many organizations. And so making sure that sales leaders, managers, and their teams are staying motivated, but also on track with the right things, feels like it's going to be even more important. And if companies haven't got these processes already embedded, they should really get going with them now, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's really been an extraordinary period for funding for our customer. For the 3 years, I want to say in a row, ed tech has, or education as a whole has been really, we have to remember, in my lifetime, they've had more free cash flow as customers than they've ever had, ever. And it's going to be somewhat restricted going forward, and it's going to impact some businesses more than other by the nature of what they do. Some are more insulated, and I would say live by the sword, die by the sword. You need to ask yourself, as a CEO and sales leader, did you vastly benefit from a it's going to impact you more if your curve, went sky high. It's You're going to be impacted more because it was because they had that funding that they found you. Have you done enough to keep their business? Have you shown back evidence? I always say to other people, like, you've got to sell their success with your product back to them at regular intervals and show them with implementation success. If you just take their money and back the truck away, you're going to be gone and forgotten. So I think that's important. Also, products that were just around the pandemic, many of us had to develop things just to support. And I expect those, and I'm starting to see the evidence of some of those products, not all, because some of them were just great ideas, but some of those products already are like, okay, we don't need that aspect of that. We just don't need it anymore. And they're not going to have the money to not make that hard decision. So it's really funny because every CEO that listens to your podcast is just saying, yeah, it's those other people, not me, because we've done this. So I'm here as a public service to all your sales leaders. Yeah, it's also you. You need to be careful about how much you're putting on your sales team when the macroeconomic conditions are going to start to tighten up. The good news is, from everything we're hearing, 24 is going to hang in there with some notable exceptions. There's already been announcements about some budget cuts in key places. And I think California has talked about belt tightening, New York City, absolutely. So I think there's going to be some places, but by and large, I think there's a lot of stability around K-12, but I do expect 25 to 27 to be the leveling out period. And it's going to be better in 2019, but I think you're going to see 2015 to 17, or 2020. What did I just say? 25? I don't even know. It's like,
Yeah, 2025, 2027 is going to be
going to be a period of return to more austerity, and how do we do more with less, and some of the price increases that went in as costs went up, are costs coming down? We're going to be expected to hand that back. So you can't just keep the price high if the reason for it isn't there.
right. Okay. So if we start looking at what 2024 is going to look like, your view is that it's the year of hang in there, some cuts somewhere, but it sounds like it's the year to get your house in order, particularly with your sales and revenue teams and your marketing teams, to make sure that all of these fundamentals are there, whether you've got in-person teams or remote teams. Just making sure that the rigor around the milestones, the activities, the quality control, and the numbers, because ultimately the numbers really do matter. Anybody who says, "Well, it's not a numbers game," I think they're lying to themselves. Quite frankly. What additional advice do you have, aside from these words of wisdom that have already been imparted? What advice do you have for managers and leaders of revenue teams for 2024, the year ahead?
Well, I think simplification is something I'm striving for. Simplifying, because the big impetus for so long was like, but it's the pandemic, so do it the best you can. Just get it done, and there'll be this excuse of like, well, it's crazy, or things are different, or we're working remotely, or we don't have we take all of that away, right? That should be no excuses in performing in a way that we feel like is the best way. It's not like my kids are home sitting on my lap because we don't have school or whatever. And I know that seems like really far away, but we got into, as a country, some bad habits during those years that we're still peeling back, right? We're still clawing our way back. Even the whole, you hear a lot of, very important tech leaders talking about you're not productive remotely. So I'm taking remote away because they're not. And I think it's not so much, again, I feel like the productivity that they're talking about was false measures anyway. And I think that it was like, well, I see you. That's how I know that you're productive and we're doing things. So employees, if they want to keep that remote work that they like, what are they doing to make sure it's like, no, I'm in my good habits. I'm working 110%. I'm putting in more. I'm back to my, like, I'm really trying to be completely back to basics. So that's more of just, I don't know. That's just like about like this whole, is remote work going to, I think a lot of people said, but my employees are still remote and I'm going to fix all my productivity issues by bringing them back in the office. I'm saying, put it on the employees, put them exactly what you need out of them on them, and see if you can't get it out of remote work, because it's definitely easy to hire. You're going to have payroll benefits, other happiness factors, engagement factors around remote. So I'm saying stay the course with remote, but make sure that they're doing that. Okay, how do we do that? We simplify the job. Okay, and by simplifying the job and making sure they understand what's important, coerce or conscript your team to identifying those things, because we can be blinded. It's just like your manager who is like, make more calls, get on that phone. It's like, but Bob, we're the ones doing it, and all of our people tell us they prefer email. And so that's why we're so quiet. We're madly like keeping up with all this correspondence, right? It's like sometimes you need to hear from the team. So give them a prompt and a couple of Zooms, break up your team and say, this year, here's your goal. We're going to be successful if we do X. Now, you got to be ready for that meeting and know what you think. But if you give that to your team and you keep going around and around until you've named everything, then simplify it. Then they'll have 3 ways of saying the same thing. And for us, like, it's talk to more people. My theme for my summer sales meeting was make your own luck. And by doing that, I said, you make your own luck because you are working around things. If you have a target district and you haven't been able to get in with them, think tangentially, who influences them and how, and you go there and influence. So it's like making your own luck. Plus we were meeting at a casino, which was like turned out to be really interesting. But anyway, so okay, how do you make your own luck? It's you talking to more people. How do you talk to more people? So you might hear people say it in 5 different ways. They're saying, we got to email more. I need to be on more lists, or I need to do this. So ultimately it's like talking to more people, and then keep those very small, few simple things top of mind in your recognition programs, in your one-to-ones, in dashboard, in everything, just a few things. And if the few drivers that you come up with, you're constantly talking about throughout 24, you should be more successful. It's what it's what you who know your business best said it would make you more successful. The problem often isn't knowing it, it's doing it, right? It's saying it. Like my team will know. It's like, we need to have more conversations. We need to get in front of more people, or do this differently. It's doing it. It's making the time and doing it, and not be distracted by the reality, which is the 80% of your week that's like you're reacting to what's happening to you. And I'm saying you got to carve out at least 20% of your week to drive, right? To do the things that you said is going to make you more successful.
Okay, well, I love all of that. Keeping it simple, back to basics, allocating the time, and getting a collaborative approach to figuring out the success of a team. The people who are most closest to the customers often have the answers. So as a leader of revenue teams, you don't have to come up with the answers yourself. So all of those are tremendous pearls of wisdom. In the last couple of minutes, what are you most excited about for Great Minds in 2024?
Thanks. Well, so definitely, I'm just coming off a week too with my leadership, my fellow C-suite, if you will, at our headquarters. It was great. We had our board meeting, and I just kept marveling at how in sync our team is. And I would attribute that to that we have incredibly concrete near term. Like we know our short term, and our short term is always concrete. And often people know where they want to go in 10 years, but it's that little middle ground. Especially we focus a lot on 25, 26, 27, because we're just like ahead of our folks. And I feel like we very concretely know what we're achieving and what we're setting out to achieve, and we're all on the same page. And that just is so engaging to me, because I'm not having to feel like I need to get people on my side of something, or like that work I feel is behind me, which can be, as a sales leader, can be most of your work, is explaining to the product people that isn't going to lead to sales, or explaining to the legal team that's restrictive or whatever. Like, I feel like all of that work is behind us. We've got this incredible synchronicity around, we know what we have to do, and let's just like drive it. And that's a really good place to be.
That really does sound exciting. It's not anything sort of wild and fabulous from an external point of view. It's just all about having the right building blocks internally and being surrounded by amazing colleagues who are all on the same page. That sounds just like the right answer for ending off this year and starting 2024. Thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure.
It's a pleasure. I love the podcast. I've learned a lot from it. So thanks to all your future guests. And I'm really proud to be among them now on tape.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Julie. Bye
Take
now.
care.
Thanks for hanging around all the way to the end. It would mean the world if you would rate and review on Work and Revolution on your favorite listening app. It helps people know that the show is worth listening to. And so I'll really appreciate that. Thank you so much.